Good evening. Peter's away tonight. Well, most years, the flu season is trailing off by now, but tonight health officials all over North America are scrambling. For starters, there's that mystery illness in Mexico we told you about last night. Doctors here in Canada are watching for worrisome symptoms in returning travelers. And now health officials in the United States are concerned about a new strain of swine flu in 2 states that border Mexico. So, coincidence or connection? The CBC's Joanna Rumiliotis is on the story.
It started in Mexico City with a cluster of cases, people reporting severe flu-like symptoms. Then another cluster in a city nearby and a few more isolated cases in the south. 20 people have died in the last week, most of them young adults between 25 to 44 years old. It's not clear what killed them, but in this post-SARS era especially, everyone is on high alert.
We absolutely have to remain vigilant in the country around the situation in Mexico and globally. And again, we continue to evaluate what is going on there and work closely with the World Health Organization.
Canada's Public Health Agency has issued an advisory warning health officials to actively look for cases of severe respiratory illness, particularly among those patients who've been in Mexico within the last 2 weeks. About 10 people have been investigated in Ontario alone.
I can't say it's a stagnant number. It's probably changing by the hour as they come. Some come in, some come off.
Still, there's no sign the mystery virus has appeared in Canada. But in a troubling development, a unique type of swine flu has been diagnosed in 7 people in California and Texas this week. The states share a border with Mexico, not far from a town where 2 deaths were reported. The U.S. cases are unusual because it does not appear any of the patients had contact with pigs, and the virus is one health officials have never seen before.
We don't know yet how widely it's spreading, and we certainly don't know the extent of the problem.
No cases of this swine flu have been found in Canada, and if there is a link between the cases in the U.S. and Mexico, Canada's top laboratory will help establish it. Officials here are analyzing 51 samples from Mexico, one of the critical tests, whether any are swine flu. If they are, it could signal the emergence of a new pandemic virus.
We could be technically seeing the tip of an iceberg, and there could be a lot more cases.
Health officials say the speculation won't last long. Within a couple of days, laboratory results will be in, and the picture will be clearer. Joanna Rumiliotis, CBC News, Toronto.
Let's get back to the story we're watching. It's developing out of Mexico, the outbreak of a respiratory illness that has been deadly. It's killed 20 people so far. Dr. Alison McGeer is one of Canada's leading infectious disease specialists. She's the Director of Infection Control at Mount Sinai Hospital in Toronto, and here to talk a little bit more about what we're learning from Mexico. Thank you for coming in. Public Health Agency of Canada has issued an advisory so far. What have you heard in your hospital?
Well, there's been advisories at the federal level and at the provincial level in Ontario, which is as it should be. And what we know at the moment is that there has been apparently an outbreak in Mexico. The Mexican authorities are apparently saying that they have detected influenza in this outbreak, and most of the rest of the country is having a bit of a late season surge in influenza, which happens, and so it makes sense, and I think the general assumption is that's probably what it is. We tend to think of seasonal influenza as not a very serious illness, but if you test more for it, you actually find out how many people it kills. So that's the working hypothesis about what it is. But in the meantime, our piece of the global surveillance that will allow us to be sure about what it is to be watching for travelers, to be testing people who have traveled to Mexico and have acute respiratory illness, so that in a week or two, the World Health Organization can put it all together and say, okay, that's what it was. This is what we need to do now.
Okay. There was some talk that this was maybe some mutant form of the flu, that they do have a good vaccination program in Mexico, but somehow there might